Hello and welcome to Bread of Life, a daily devotional program which each week features a different area pastor. Our speaker for this week is Pastor Riendeau of Bloomfield.
Hello, friends. I'm so happy to be able to talk with you through radio on the sovereignty of God. This week, we're looking at the Jesus way, the way of Jesus lived out in selfless community for the sake of the gospel. Now, yesterday, I asked us to consider whether we're contributing to or detracting from a selfless community. See, the gospel is more clearly seen when a group of saved sinners, saved by grace, can actually extend that same grace to one another. What a witness in our divided world, right? Well, this is essentially what Paul says in Philippians chapter 2 in the first 4 verses. Let me read them again. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. I call this the Jesus way, and it's grounded in a common sharing in the Spirit, or koinonia. I find it helpful to illustrate this Greek word koinonia, this common sharing in the Spirit, by comparing a head of broccoli with a bunch of asparagus. I hope you can picture that in your mind. You know when you go to a grocery store, how broccoli are sold, right? They're all in these heads of broccoli. But how are asparagus sold? Well, those are normally individual stalks that are joined together by a rubber band, right? Can you see that in your mind? Now, the head of broccoli is one organic whole. All the stalks come off a common root. There's an integral connection that's organic to each of the stalks. They are one body with many different expressions. Now, the asparagus, on the other hand, has no natural connection, but is simply bound together by an external factor, the elastic band. So let me ask you, what happens when you cut the elastic band on a batch of asparagus? Well, all the individual stalks of asparagus just fall to the ground, right? But if I were to put an elastic band around a head of broccoli stalks and cut it, what would happen? Well, nothing, because they're joined together in a organic connection, a common root. The head of broccoli is one body with many members. So I would say that the batch of asparagus is a crowd, but the head of broccoli is a fellowship. They're a community sharing deeply in a common life. The asparagus stalks have no true connection to each other except for this external factor that keeps them together, the rubber band. Maybe you could think of it this way. I mentioned the UConn basketball team a few days ago. Think of going to a UConn basketball game, right? Everyone's high-fiving. It seems like they're all connected to each other, but really they're bound together by something external to themselves, a common interest, the UConn basketball team. And as soon as that interest is cut away, in other words, as soon as the game ends, what happens? Each individual just goes their own way. They're not really a community. They're just a group. They're a crowd. A crowd is a grouping of individuals with an external common interest. And I fear that many churches are just crowds. We're called to be a community, sharing in a common life, the life of Christ. So a community is like a family. There's a connection that remains even when common interests aren't the same. There's a forever bond. That's what the Greek word koinonia means. And that's what we're called to, a deep sharing in a common life. And when it comes to the church, that common life, that root is Jesus. So how do I know if I'm more like broccoli or asparagus? Well, just consider how you'd feel if you left your church. For instance, if an asparagus stalk decided to leave the batch of asparagus, would it impact any of the other asparagus stalks? Not at all, because they're not really connected to each other. But what if a stalk of broccoli wanted to leave the fellowship of the broccoli? What would they have to do? They'd have to be torn out. Ouch! So listen to me. If leaving something doesn't hurt, it means you were never connected to the common life of that thing. You weren't experiencing true community. So let me ask you, are you broccoli or asparagus? Are you contributing to or detracting from a selfless community? Tomorrow, we'll start to see how Paul describes the Jesus way.
You've been listening to Pastor Andre Riendeau of Bloomfield, and this has been Bread of Life, a program to encourage you from God's Word.